episode 9 of the Veloce Podcast.
Hello, welcome back.
Yeah, yet again. So we're going to cover the Formula One, aren't we? So we had the Bahrain Grand Prix. So that was last weekend, wasn't it?
It was.
So we've just had Easter, haven't we? So we thought we'd delay it and do it for Easter Monday, didn't we? Instead,
yes. Well, we thought we'd have a little look at the Extreme E, so we'll touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
We go through.
Absolutely. So, we focused a lot last week on motorsport. So we're still going to talk about the Formula One, of course, especially being round one. But we're going to focus a bit more on road cars this week.
Yeah, a bit more to talk about. We've had a good week, haven't we, with road cars?
Yeah. So we've been testing a variety of cars. We always wanted to kind of bring the review into it anyway, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And we've been very lucky to drive some nice variety of cars, really, haven't we, this
we've
week?
We've done some nice stuff. Because we'll talk about that over coming weeks, won't we? What we've
absolutely. So, so a bit later on in the podcast, we'll focus on that, and we'll also go through a little driving gem bit as well.
Yeah.
So, what about the Formula One then? Let's start with that. So,
what
did you think?
Eagerly anticipated.
Yeah.
And given the form through the testing, they did 3 days at the same circuit, and then all Friday, Saturday morning, qualifying, all dominated by Max Verstappen. So. Really, it was Red Bull's race to lose, and they did.
Yeah, well, that's I always wondered, as you know, I'm a bit how do you put it, dubious about pre-season testing.
Yes,
because you never know what people are showing, do you? But like you say, on the actual weekend. It looked like Red Bull really were the guys to win. And
quite a dominant pole, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as expected, quickest in every session.
3/10, wasn't it? Which is huge.
And he was quickest in every session. Friday and Saturday.
Absolutely. So, like pre-season testing, I wasn't sure. You could see Mercedes were struggling, but you never know what they're testing.
No.
But Hamilton did have a couple of major spins, which... it's unusual, isn't it?
They were definitely struggling in the testing.
Absolutely, but they had a couple of weeks, didn't they, before the actual event? And of course, with their resources, they've managed to turn it around.
Because they're still operating under the budget cap, so it's the people they've got that have made the
I think
the difference there. I guess
obviously Lewis Hamilton winning, I think, has shown really the class of Lewis and the team as a whole.
Yeah, because Red Bull again, bizarre, seemed to forget they had Perez with them at all.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I always thought with Perez's experience, this will really show now, because they've always had juniors, haven't they?
Yeah, it's
coming
easy
straight
to understand.
So you can see how it's overwhelming for a junior, how they end up in a bit of a mess, that kind of thing. Whereas Perez has got a lot of experience, he knows how good he is. We all know how good he is on Sundays.
Yeah.
So he's a proven quantity.
He is.
Yeah. In qualifying, they threw him straight out into traffic.
Yeah.
Because they're so focused on Max.
Yes.
So of course, then where is he?
And then didn't put him on the right tyres. I mean, he was academic in the end because he broke down on the outlap, didn't he?
But it does make you wonder. And I've seen a few comments, people saying, "Why are they even running another car?"
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know it's normal to have perhaps potentially a 1 and 2, and you don't want two kind of Lewis Hamiltons together or two Maxes together. No. Well, you saw that with Daniel Ricciardo and Max. It started to end in fireworks a little bit, didn't it?
It always does. History tells you that.
Well, exactly. Seen it time and time again. That's why it works so well. No disrespect to Valtteri, but it works so well because Hamilton is just normally that little bit quicker. And we're talking a small amount, but enough that... it works well for Mercedes because Bottas normally, I know he had probably the worst start he's ever had to a season since being at Mercedes, because he's normally, if anything, more dominant in the
he didn't really show up, did he?
No, I think he spoke quite openly about having a sports psychologist, which in most sports is a normal thing, isn't it? Having a performance coach in all ways, but for whatever reason in motorsport, it seems to have been missed a lot, and I've never really understood that.
No.
I know Martin Brundle spoke about it, and he said it was always viewed wrongly, but viewed as weak.
And there is. I mean, I don't know how true it is, but there were rumours a few years ago that Nigel Mansell helped Lewis. Mm-hmm. Jackie Stewart spoke to Grosjean, and he spoke to Lewis. So people helping them with mind management.
Yeah.
From two guys who were really good at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But having an actual, it's still kind of frowned upon and not really talked about. Like the fact that we don't really know if Mansell went and spoke to Lewis.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But this time, Bottas, we know, has had proper performance coach mentally.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure a lot of people go, oh, well, what good did that make when he, but he's, I believe, been with Mercedes for 5 years. Is that right, or 4? 5, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
This being his 5th year, I think. I could be wrong. So of course he's got 5 years of that build up. If you look at his record as such, every year he gets a bit weaker.
He does, he does.
As Lewis becomes stronger and stronger every year, he's getting weaker and weaker, and you can see it's a mental thing. I have no doubt whatsoever in Valtteri's pace at all and his ability.
Oh, he's a quick racing driver.
But the big thing is it's the whole package, and between being a very, very good, one of the best in the world, and the greats, is that mental approach, and a lot of people probably will call it arrogance, but the greats have that, don't they? They're not quite the same. It's like Martin Brundle spoke to interview Fernando Alonso, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
And what did he say about that?
He said, he's been in motor racing all his life, and he said, you are one of the top 5% of the toughest people I've ever met.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it takes that. You've almost got to be a bit different, haven't you?
Well, it showed when at McLaren, when it was Alonso and Hamilton at McLaren, it just exploded into a mess. Yeah. Because that's what happens. Like it did with Senna and Prost.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
A rock and a hard place is never going to work. 2 bulls in one field, I think Ron Dennis describes it as.
Yeah, well, because I do think you kind of need one nicer guy, don't you? In some respects, and I don't mean that badly, but Valtteri's biggest problem is he's too nice. Yes. And I think he proved it last year. He got it. He got to a point where he was looking at troll comments and things and responding to that, which is a no-win situation. And to be fair, Lewis gets just as much stick for different reasons. Yeah. As Valtteri gets, so I think for the thing is, you just can't focus on those negatives. And as much as you tell people I'm not, if you're talking about it, you kind of are. Right? It's in the front of your mind. So I'm sure hopefully he'll get stronger as the season goes on. But I almost feel for Valtteri, unless he gets a fresh start, I'm not sure whether he will. But we'll see. I think just Lewis has always been phenomenal, but now he's 7-time world champion. He's at the best he's ever been. So how? And
I don't know whether he's not number 2, is he?
No, I don't think. I think if Valtteri suddenly, well, look, Rosberg did it. Yeah. So we know that they'll back the horse that's going to get them the championship.
But going back in the history, if you look at somebody like Ronnie Peterson, he was one of the legends of the sport. He was signed as number 2 to Mario Andretti. So Andretti, was one of my big heroes. He knew he wasn't as quick as Peterson, but Peterson's job was to sit behind him, and he did, and he sat like there behind him, hoping he'd break. Yeah. But he didn't overtake him. But his job was to be number 2. Yeah. Valtteri's job isn't to be number 2.
No, exactly. It's not. It isn't in the script. He's
having to assume that role. It's not in the script. No,
absolutely. And we know from Rosberg, as soon as Rosberg kind of outthought Lewis in certain ways. I appreciate Lewis had some unfortunate situations, but hey, you could argue that. I mean, gosh, look at Valtteri last year. He was really unlucky with things. You can't look at it like that, and that's why somebody else has got a championship. Because I think most of the time there is a bit of luck involved. Whatever. I mean, if you look at Lewis, and then when Williams driver came in to replace him.
Russell, George Russell.
Yes, George Russell. Yeah, how unlucky was that? Yeah. It just, things happen sometimes.
But I do, and I said this at the time, that I think Lewis would have won that race. Because he, with his experience and his place in the team, he would have said, no, I'm not pitting now. The tyres are fine. Yeah. Well, George had no choice. He had to do what he was told.
Yeah, and you've got
to... you think, well, that's why Lewis is a 7-time world champion, whether you like him or not.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do understand from George's perspective, you're not going to go in there and boss the team around.
No, of course you're not.
And also, to be honest, normally, they were having a bad day. Yes. Normally, they're not on a bad day, so you would trust their judgment and their call, wouldn't you, as a driver? So, you'd say. So anyway, moving on, because also we're talking a lot about Mercedes here. Yeah. But what about the Alpine then?
Well, I mean, as we've said, Fernando Alonso is an operator, isn't he? And he said he's not ready yet and yet he was dragging that car to places it shouldn't have been, and just showed
like
his absolute class.
At
really.
one point, he was behind Leclerc, and
he was like 6th or 7th or something. He went in the pits, came out like 4th.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I remember Martin Brundle and a couple of the other guys saying the car just looked wild because he's basically massively outdriving this car.
It's not ready for Fernando Alonso, which is what Williams said, didn't they, a few years ago, and they were moving before they kind of started to drop down again. Started to move up, and Martin Brundle said, "Would you have Fernando Alonso?" And they said, "We're not ready for Fernando Alonso."
Yeah.
Well, Alpine isn't quite ready for Fernando Alonso.
But I think it will be good for Alpine because I think ultimately, rightly or wrongly, Alonso is very strong-minded and will probably push the team quite a lot forward. I think you're probably
going to have to up their game.
And you're going to have to manage him. I think because he's quite a political man. But I do think, honestly, I think that it could be really good for that team. I think for Ocon, it's not going to be a good thing having
It's going to be a long year for Ocon, I think.
Yeah,
we could be wrong.
Yeah,
I've been wrong about. As we'll come on to in a second, I've been a little bit wrong, I think, so far with my predictions with other teams.
Yeah.
But I think that it would be a long season for Ocon.
Yeah. Well, Alonso, you speak to many guys in the sport and team bosses and things, whereas we've both had a few conversations through other events with them. And it's amazing how many people say Fernando Alonso is the best all-round driver. That is too political. It'll be interesting to see, but I think it certainly proves the point about age. That obviously, I understand in your 80s and things it's different, but being 40 is no big deal.
But like I said, Mario Andretti was still doing frontline IndyCars well into his 50s.
Yeah. Well, if you think Damon didn't debut until he was in his 30s, we've got a bit obsessed with them being 16.
Yeah.
And I think actually, what's the rush? Because if anything, these cars are probably a little bit easier to drive from a physical element. Obviously, I appreciate you've got the G-forces, don't you?
Yeah, but the power steering.
Exactly, but there is also more aids. I think hopefully it proves that point. So it means drivers can have a longer life. Yes, okay, that means the juniors have to wait a bit longer, but that's not a bad thing. Come in with a bit more experience, that kind of thing, and then be ready to hit the ground running a bit more. I think it's a good thing. So what about McLaren? Well,
McLaren again looked strong, didn't they? But this is one of the ones that so far, after the first weekend, I predicted that I thought Norris would struggle a bit with Ricciardo, and it was actually the other way around. I know he had damage in the race, Daniel. He
had damage almost from the first lap on the floor tray.
He clashed with somebody, I can't remember who, but he clashed with somebody. Didn't he?
I think it's really hard to tell.
After one weekend, it's hard to tell. But Norris was on his game all weekend.
Yeah. If you think about with Daniel, with what happened at Renault, it took him probably 3 meetings and then suddenly, bang, he was dominant.
Poor old Ocon again.
And I think this is what you're going to potentially see is Daniel, you can see on the face of it, he's happy, smiling, Mr. Nice Guy, joker, but he's very serious about what he does. And I think he's like you say, a proper operator, and he's known for that.
He's got a core of steel, I always say that about Daniel Ricciardo.
Absolutely. So I do think he said at the end of the race, because he out-qualified Norris, but then he got that damage, and he said he's just not quite found the sweet spot with the setup yet. The car feels quite different, so there's some work to do. But you think he wasn't that far behind considering. But all of that said, Norris is getting faster and faster and faster and more confident, and he's a young lad, and I love his kind of outlook, the way he clearly loves what he does. It's quite refreshing for the sport that he doesn't always take everything super seriously. Obviously he does with his job, but outside of that he has a bit of a laugh, and it's kind of nice. And I wonder if that's why they wanted both of them together, because it's a great PR machine, isn't it?
Yes.
Because it's nice for spectators to see all of that, on social
and
media.
Zach Brown is so good at what he does. He's clever.
Yeah. So we'll see, but I'm really rooting for McLaren. I think they're getting stronger all the time. I think Zach Brown's doing a mega job of leading them and
employing the right people.
Exactly, putting the right team together. Ultimately, that's his job, and I think he's doing that.
He brought it from Porsche, didn't he? And he's come up with that clever diffuser, and Zach Brown knows what he's doing.
Oh, absolutely. So what about the Aston?
Well, we've said this before, haven't we? That when it was a pink Mercedes last year, if you copy somebody else's design, you don't know the philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
Why Mercedes have done things a certain way, Otmar has said that that they've been penalised because it's a low rate car, and they warn the rule makers, and you think, well, that's tough. That's how it is. But I think because they didn't design the car themselves, and they'll argue that they did, but they clearly didn't. They now don't know what to do with it because the Mercedes won the race, and that's a low rate car.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all of a sudden, Aston are really nowhere.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I know Vettel found it very, very difficult to drive.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of niggles with it, things that aren't right. I do think that the low rate cars are being hit a little bit harder with this reduction of aero. But that said, like you say, Mercedes, okay. I don't think they had the quickest car this weekend, but it wasn't far off either.
No.
So that's the thing that Aston have to look at. And yeah, hopefully now being Aston, they'll have more resources to
but they can't spend any more than anybody else. So.
No, but compared to the past, I suppose that hopefully now there is a cap on it, that kind of thing.
But I just wonder if they've painted themselves into a corner a bit with it because they don't know now how to get themselves out of it.
But do you think that's why they've got somebody like Vettel? I was going to say Verstappen then from
Maybe.
Not because there's a huge amount of people to get a car to that level. It's not down to the driver, is it? But he has been to a lot of high-end teams, knows how they operate, so he's got a lot of knowledge there, and he will know a lot of what's going on behind the scenes, so he can bring that to Aston. I think that's a big asset for them ultimately. So, and I think you'll see Vettel get stronger and stronger really as the season goes on. I really do, as he gets settled. We probably should move on though, shouldn't we?
But I was just going to mention about Ferrari. I was going to say because they were the other one that I predicted that Sainz would struggle a bit with Leclerc, and he's actually been right on him. The only thing is, and we've not seen it play out yet, Leclerc is an Alonso, and on Sunday he's relentless, and he was again. The car still doesn't look that quick in a straight line. But Leclerc had it like up into fourth place for a lot of the race.
Oh yeah, I think what I would love to see, sadly I don't think it will ever happen, is Lewis and Leclerc in the same team. It won't happen, but it would be lovely to see, because I think Leclerc, we watch a lot of the junior ranks, and the last person to be so dominant in Formula 2 was Lewis.
So
exactly. when you look at it that way.
Well, he won Euro F3, then he won FIA or GP3 as it was at the time, then he won F2, all at his first attempt. And when he did F2, every time we put it on, Leclerc on pole, Leclerc on pole, Leclerc on, he's like, bang, Christ,
And that just doesn't happen in Formula 2, because obviously at that level, people know what they're doing. And they've been doing it a long time. They're trying to get into Formula 1. There's a huge amount of money and resources going into it. So to be dominant is, that's why Ferrari have done this. What is the deal they've done with him? It's the longest deal they've done.
The longest deal they've ever done with a driver, 5 years or something.
And I think that says a lot.
His F2 lap record round Bahrain is still held by Leclerc. Which is the race when he went in with about 10 laps to go and change tyres and came from 18th and won it.
It was very, very special. But that shows, to be fair to Sainz, how good and perhaps underrated Sainz is. Because certainly in testing and the qualifying sessions up to the final one, because then he was stuck in traffic and then the yellow and all that, so it didn't pan out. But he was actually quicker than Leclerc. So we'll see, won't we?
Anyway, so I stopped you moving on then.
No, that's okay. That's
Talk
right.
about something else now. For a bit.
Sorry. So Extreme E then. So you've seen more of this than I have, to be honest.
Well, I didn't know what to think of it. I said to you, didn't I, that there's very, very little information on the website. There's a lot of words, but it didn't really tell you anything. So where were the tracks? What do the tracks look like? How long are the tracks? What's the format? And it was so hard to find information. And it turned out, I watched a couple of bits and pieces of it, and there's some massive names in it, like Loeb's in it, Buttons in it. Rosberg and Hamilton have got teams. And it was as dull as ditch water. I mean, it perhaps they'll change it, I don't know.
I think
man, it was boring.
It's great that it's a male-female duo. I think it's brilliant for females in the sport, especially having those kind of contacts and connections. There's lots of great things, and it's great to see something new. But straight away, one flaw is having 3 cars going off on sand together. You could clearly see whoever got in the lead had a massive advantage.
That was the end of that, really.
They could see. and the other two couldn't see.
It was just
so they
bizarre.
ended up, so I thought they've got to do something about that, because you basically can't really race.
No.
Because you end up on a bizarre line miles away to otherwise be able to see.
Yeah.
Or you have to drop back, and that you could see basically each time that was what was happening. So, and they were showing obviously second or third place, and you just couldn't see loads and loads of sand.
No, you're talking about F1 can't follow.
Yeah, and it's
you need to be about a mile behind to get an idea.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Formula E...
It's certainly some ironing out, isn't there?
Because we might say people run Formula E, and Formula E is dying on its feet slowly.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people have come out now and said that there was... I can't think of which driver it was. It's escaped me. Duval.
Yeah.
Who said they are the most boring racing cars you'll ever drive in your life.
Is that right?
And of course all the manufacturers are pulling out because it's not... They've kind of done that now. They're all going to Le Mans and...
Well, of course, now you've got these hypercars and things in Le Mans, and I think it's going to be a brilliant time for sports cars. That's going to be mega.
Well, Formula E's kind of... Because it is pretty... they all set off round the car park, and it's... And I think they've done the same thing with perhaps it'll get better. They've got time to look at it and think, okay, that format hasn't particularly worked.
Because I think it's great that they're trying new things and new concepts, and that's brilliant for the sport. But you could see there were a few things that weren't quite right.
They've reinvented the wheel, really.
And I think they just need to iron it out a bit.
Yeah.
And like you rightly said, some of the commentators didn't know virtually any of the female drivers' names. Now, admittedly, that might be because there's some that perhaps haven't got that much experience. I don't know, but you should know.
Peter McKay would have known their names.
Absolutely. It doesn't look great, does it? It doesn't make it look that professional. So that's one thing to say. But I think we've got to give it a bit of
another
time.
Go.
Yeah, absolutely. Give it a bit of time, give it a go, and see what happens. So I suppose we should actually move on to the road section. As we said, this would be more road focused.
Yes,
so
we've got to road cars, haven't we?
To move on. So we spent part of the week down in Hampshire, didn't we?
We did. A client's house, all COVID secure.
Yeah,
very socially distanced.
And, and this client, it's become a good friend of mine, hasn't he? Over the time, and like a lot of our clients, they have some nice cars, don't they?
Which he very kindly said we could come and review and film and photograph. And
so we won't give away the game of all of the things we've seen and reviewed but we're focusing on two, aren't we?
Yes.
Two very different cars as well. So we're going to look at the Trophy R Mclaren.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't believe the price tag of that, by the way.
No.
So only 32 were made, and they start at 50,000. But then there's two Nürburgring specials at 72,000. Yes. Which you think, wow, that is a lot for a Mclaren. But anyway, so we'll focus on that.
We'll talk about that in a
minute.
minute.
We're also going to look at the 992 Targa and Targa S, aren't we?
Yes, but it was the Heritage Design Edition specifically, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
That was the rare thing again.
Yeah, a very rare thing. So I don't know if you want to kick off with the Trophy R a little bit.
Yeah, so the Trophy R then, Renault Sport have built some brilliant bits of kit over the years. I remember the Renault Sport Clio 200, which is not the current shape, the previous one, the last three-door one they did. What a brilliant car that was.
Yeah.
It had like Brembo brakes on it as standard. It's a fantastic car. And my understanding is that the current Renault Sport Clio is a good car. The only one I've driven is this Trophy R.
Yeah.
And if you'd have said to me, this is a 25 grand car, you'd think this is a good car. It's all right. This. As soon as you get up towards 50 odd grand, you start to think, it's a bit compromised really for that. I understand the rarity of it, and it is it's a special car. It's got some clever kit on it,
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't say no to one.
No.
But I think as soon as you're getting 50 to 70 grand, there's suddenly quite a market of cars, isn't there? That's the difference.
It's not special enough for that money.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it sounded fabulous. So it's a 1.8 litre, isn't it?
Yeah, and it went well, didn't it? Sounded good, went well.
It was quick.
Sharp, handled well.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say, in that sense, it seemed to. They say they focused on it being light, aero, that kind of thing, and they've radically transformed the axle and suspension design. Apparently,
they've messed about with it a lot, put big brakes on it and things.
Yeah, and I think you can tell all of that. So I think it depends what environment is, in a way, for me. So if it was on track, I think it would really come alive and it would make you smile a lot.
Yes.
On road, it felt too firm.
Yeah.
And a bit clunky.
It was almost harsh, wasn't it, the ride?
Yeah, and we'll come on to other reviews later on in different episodes with cars that you'd expect to be harsh, but now are very sophisticated suspension setups. And that's what that was lacking, is it'd be mega on track, but on road, it was unbelievably harsh. Probably
we
one of
filmed
the
it, didn't we?
harshest...
People, if you watch the videos, you can hear.
Oh yeah.
That it's a very
you can't really hear what we're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's certainly something. But no, I mean, it was built well, and I think a great car for track. But for me personally, things like the brakes were a bit too heavily servo assisted, so they were a bit snatchy. The pedal arrangement could have been a bit better, and the gearbox could have felt shorter throw, a bit nicer. Again, I think it's all down to that price bracket, because if that was, like, say, 25-30 grand, you'd probably think, okay, but for the money, that's a really good car. But as soon as you get into 50-70, you start, rightly or wrongly,
a little bit.
You start, your expectations go up, don't they?
Because the attention to detail's not there for that level of cost.
Yeah, so I think, obviously, it's rare. It's a good thing in that it goes up in value. It's a nice little toy.
It looks cool, doesn't it?
I
red
think
decals, red wheels.
Absolutely. I think in that, the styling, you cannot fault it.
No.
The styling, what they've done in many respects, the sound, the engine. So yeah, I think an all-round good car. But for the road, if you wanted to drive it on the road as well, I'm not sure if the novelty would wear off pretty quick.
Yeah.
With the car,
I think it would. Yeah.
But yeah. But we've done a review on that, which we'll put on the channel anyway, so you can actually see it in action, see what you think.
Yeah.
But also then we've got the Targa
4S.
Yeah.
So Porsches we know about, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any regular listeners will know that we're Porsche files, and we've spent a lot of time in 911s.
Yeah.
And this is obviously Targa 4S is a 992 Targa 4S. It's what you would expect it to be. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And this was the Heritage Edition. Now, apparently they're going to release other models. So this is tied in more, I believe, to like the 1950s. And they're going to do like a 60s, 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Heritage Editions,
whale tail
that kind of thing. And that would be so awesome if they do that.
Yeah.
So this was cherry metallic, wasn't it?
It was.
And it had vinyl like decals.
Yeah, so a big roundel on it and things. You can have a number. You can have any number on it. Apparently, Porsche will put you a number on it.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because
So
this one didn't have a number on it, did it?
No, it didn't. No.
Yeah, and of course it's very, very Porsche. Obviously the finish of it.
But the little design things, like the what made the Heritage Edition, like the gold badges it had on it.
Yeah.
Green dials, which the last car that I know that had that was the 91150, which was a fabulous car.
Yeah, one of my favourites.
Oh yeah, all green dials. So I was lucky enough to race an early 60s 911, and that were all green dials in it, which is how they were. So obviously this is going back to 356s, so even earlier than that.
Absolutely.
So the rev counter looks like the rev counter out of a 356.
Absolutely.
But then it's a modern Porsche,
But that's what's so clever. As much as some people criticise Porsche for not perhaps being radical enough or
was it
adventurous
Clarkson?
enough.
Jeremy Clarkson said they've got their design. Porsche design's got the easiest job in the world.
Yeah. But of course,
but actually, they completely redesign the thing every time.
Absolutely. And the thing is, they know what works, and it's very distinctive. In many respects, for a long time you only need to listen and know exactly it was a Porsche. I know that's changing a bit now because it has to, but the way they look is so distinctive, whether it's something from the 60s, 50s or something now. That's the thing, is it's very to its roots and its heritage, and that's what's so cool about this. So it's still underneath a Targa. Well, we were in the S model, so both 3 litre bi-turbos again, aren't they? This one was 440, brake horsepower.
Because
they're
looks
all
retro-y.
4-wheel drive as well, aren't they, for the Targa, that is.
But it looks retro because it's the Targa. So 993, I think, and 996, 997, is that right? Targas were a glass roof panel, which you can get glass roof panel on anything now. So 991, they went back to the big rollover bar
the
design,
silver,
which is what this has got. So it looks retro anyway. So then with all the extra bits on it, it's a really cool looking thing.
And of course the roof. I mean, I'm sure most people have seen it now, but if you haven't,
it's a proper Heath Robinson thing, the roof, isn't it?
But it's awesome.
Yeah.
The way it comes, but it's a big chunk of the car that comes up.
It is.
Still have to do it from stationary.
Yeah.
I mean, firstly, there's a lot of car hanging off, but on that move. But also it blocks the lights, doesn't it? The rear lights.
Yeah.
So I believe that's the biggest reason why, compared to the convertible, that they didn't do it. But I'm sure weight and everything else.
Yeah, there's a big old chunk of roof disappears.
Of white. I'm sure it could be done, but they probably
if you
thought,
parked too close to a wall as well, because it goes quite a long way at the back.
Oh,
there.
and I've been paranoid of that, demonstrating it to clients on
yeah.
occasions. Thinking I'm going to be the person that does that.
So how did you damage your car? Well,
I remember doing that with a Panamera, actually, doing a job for Porsche and getting down to London, and managed to navigate my way through this underground car park. And anybody that knows of Panny knows how big they are. Stressed myself out. I thought, oh, finally, I've got in and parked. And I pressed the key for the boot, thinking that it has a sensor.
It would be clever, yeah. It did. When it hit the roof, it stopped.
Yeah, and so it slashed straight into the roof, damaged all the badge and all that. And I thought, I made it this far.
Yeah.
The last bit. Because of course it just switched off at that point.
Yeah.
So I pressed the thing and didn't think that, because it's an underground car park and really tight, the level of the roof was very, very low. Yeah.
Because you can stop them and then it remembers, doesn't it? But
yeah, I hadn't. No. I hadn't got that far. So that was a mistake. Yeah, so good point. But so this car is very much on its own sort of path compared to other 911s, in that it's far more of a Grand Tourer, isn't it, really?
Yeah, because it's the heaviest of the
it's
models
about 40 kilos heavier. I know. 40. Oh, you can see now I can't talk. 40 kilos heavier than the convertible. It's a lot heavier. But to be fair, I think unless you're on track, leaning on it,
you wouldn't notice.
I don't think you'd notice.
It's
so clever with active suspension and torque vectoring and all these other things they have now, that I really don't think you'd notice. But a big talking point with Tiger, and something we get asked a lot, is the buffeting.
Yes.
So about halfway through the 991 Targa cycle, they added on a little front spoiler.
They did,
at the top of the
so the
windscreen.
socket pops up, doesn't it, like a little blade?
Yeah. So that's still there. Honestly, I don't know if that's been redesigned a little bit. I think from looking at it, it looked like it had, but honestly, I'm not sure by how much. But what were your thoughts on the buffeting?
It still is buffeting. It's noisy, but I suppose depends how you look at it. So if you drive a 1975 Targa, that'll buff it like crazy, won't it? So perhaps it's gone for the full retro treatment, and you can't hear yourself thinking it. But the problem is with modern ones, if you get a carb, and drop the roof on that, put the windbreak up, you don't really get any buffeting or wind in the car at all. It's fabulous.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's against in some ways, isn't it?
Yes, it's just the technology's moved on as much as anything else, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. So I think that's kind of I found anything over about 45, it's pretty noticeable.
You've got to start shouting,
But, I mean, it's horses for courses. I've met many a client that is super happy with their Targa.
Yeah.
And it does not bother them at all.
No.
So I think, it's something to be aware of before you purchase one. And I would always say try it out if you can. I know that's always really hard, because, of course, a lot of centres don't have Targas to try out. But be aware of that, watch videos. But, it certainly wouldn't put me off one. But it's just something to be aware of, isn't it, really? We're going to do some more driving gem.
So we've not recorded a driving gem for a bit, have we? So but this is one that it came up with the cars that we've been driving this week.
So we found in a variety of cars. Sometimes the setup of the seat is very high. And you can't get it low.
You feel like
and
you're
even
on top of the
in
thing.
Cars like we've had it with Mclarens and things, haven't we? Where you think, hang on a minute, how can I be sat on the floor but feel so high? And it doesn't. And admittedly, when I say with Mclarens, it does depend on which seat option you go for, may I add. But so we found that a bit with the Trophy R, didn't we? Where it was like, right, I want to be a bit lower. It couldn't get it lower enough.
Couldn't get it lower, no. You keep looking for the adjustment, and it's just down as far as it'll go.
Yeah. So it's not the most sexy driving gem,
but it's an important one. It's the starting point, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So we were going to talk very briefly, because we don't want to bore you to tears, with seat setup, really, weren't we? Because it's something that's so easily missed. I think it's easy to get in a car and just go, just make sure you can reach the pedals, off you go. And even still today, the amount of people that aren't aware that the steering wheel comes in and out, up and down. And I appreciate older cars didn't necessarily, but they do now. There's so many more adjustments. I mean, gosh, on some of the Porsches now, it's crazy, isn't it? The seat adjustments.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I don't know if you want to just run through.
Well, I mean, they're starting with the height of the thing. It depends how tall you are. So if you're short in the body, which some people are, you've still got to get yourself sat in the right place so that you can see comfortably, because you don't want to be just staring at the dashboard and can't see out. So you want to be about a third to a half of the way up the windscreen. I think is quite a good place to start in terms of height. Yeah. But then what I tend to talk to people about is it's all about soft bends in your limbs. So you start with the clutch, or if there's no clutch, then footrest. You want to set the seat for that so that when your leg is fully stretched, it's not locked out. That's a good place to start, really, because otherwise it starts to play havoc with your lower back and.
Well, yeah, a lot of people do. How many people come to us and say, "Oh, I'm looking at the 18-way adjustable seat because I get back problems," and then you look at how they're sat and think, actually, I probably shouldn't say this because Porsche would probably rather the 18-way adjustable seat. But actually...
But if you're getting a bucket seat, you sat bolt upright in those, because that's the other thing, is people lie down quite a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the bucket seats have got better for that, because they used to be so bolt upright. If you put a helmet on, you're like staring at I'm staring at my boobs. Which is hard to do. But anyway.
No comment.
Yeah, you're not allowed to comment. So sorry, carry on. I've interrupted you.
I've lost my train of thought now. So what you're looking for then, is the same with your arms. Now, we always talk about putting your wrist, don't we, on top of the steering wheel, and you should be able to do that without stretching out the seat. So that when you drop your hands back down to the 1/4-3 position, you've got that soft bend in your arms. So that's quite a good guide. And then just set the kind of height of the wheel. You always like to try and say hands level with your shoulders, don't you?
Well, no, it's kind of tops of the thumbs.
Tops of the thumbs, right, okay.
Sort of round the shoulder line. Certainly with a race car, I've always found leverage is better that way. Yeah. Once you get lower,
a little bit too close is better than a little bit too far away.
Yeah, leverage for turning. I guess it does depend a little bit, like you say, on this is where it gets a bit complicated, on the height of the torso and so. But
overall, then you've got to try and make sure you can see the dials.
Yeah. And stuff. Overall, for me, what works is not quite like hands in line with the shoulder, just below, so that will work out roughly the tops of your thumbs or whatever, and then that sort of works quite well, because then you have good leverage when you're turning, because if you go too high, let's say you have your hands above your shoulder line, you try turn, that's actually really, really tricky. And the same if you go too low. But actually that leads on to another little point, which is probably worth just mentioning very briefly, is one of the steering methods that we encourage people to use.
Yeah, with fixed input. Go on, you talk about that.
Well, no, it's okay, you go.
So there's lots of different steering techniques. We'll talk about steering in more detail another time. But one we talk about certainly on track is what we call fixed input, which is basically keeping your hands in one place, like you see racing drivers do. So you can get a fairly amount of steering lock in without moving your hands around comfortably. So you've got everything set right if you can fixed input without
absolutely, and it gives you ultimately a bit more feel and feedback because you're not taking your hands constantly off the wheel.
No, so and it's not the only way of steering, and it's not there's,
but it does ultimately. Yeah, I think it's a great thing to do with modern cars because steering racks are quick. Yeah. I think, most modern cars now, very rarely do I have to take my hands off the wheel and shuffle around. Of course, sometimes with parking, that kind of thing, but overall once I'm going, not really. So then you have to look, is it necessary to take your hands off the wheel? If you've got your hands there and you're feeling everything through the front end more, you're more engaged, aren't you?
Yeah. It's also two of your main contact patches is your hands.
Absolutely, and it's smoother.
Yeah.
It's something we work on a lot with clients. As soon as they stop moving their hands around the wheel and get in a position, they straight away feel so much more comfortable and confident with it.
Yeah.
And you'll notice a lot of wheels are designed to have grooves to wrap your thumbs in. And even with autos now, a lot, not all, but a lot, the paddles move with the wheel, don't they?
Yeah.
So if you start shuffling your hands about, you lose complete trace of where the paddles are as well. So, a number of things. But we'll do a proper driving gem for that, won't we?
Yeah.
Later on. But yeah, seat setup, ideally as low as you feel comfortable with for feel and feedback. If you're perched on top of the car, you're not going to really get that feel.
No.
Make sure, like you say, you've got bends,
soft
elbows and knees, even when fully extended, you don't want to be stretching out. And your hands want to be just roughly around below the shoulder line when you've got your wheel set. And what was the other one? 12 o'clock. For your arms as well. So it's just worth looking at really with any of the cars you're hopping in. Make sure it's in a good position ultimately.
Yeah.
So what are we covering next week?
So I'm not sure there's another sports car race coming up. I'm not sure.
I will come back to you on that one. Actually, I will need to check.
Because motorsport's all gone a bit quiet, hasn't it? Because everything's waiting for COVID to.
Yeah, I know.
Some stuff happening over the weekend, some club stuff, but nothing of any major note.
We'll look at that. But we're going to do another couple of car reviews as well, and also we've got some up and coming guests as well. Which we'll confirm dates with that, won't we, as we go. So, to mix it up a little bit. But any questions or any cars you'd like us to review, anything like that, then
any questions you've got about the timing technique, anything like that, just let us know.
Send us an email. Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. Bye.